Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle, brought to you by WeAreSC.com. We're down a man. Greg Katz is not feeling well, so he's out, but the rest of our crew is here, and we have stuff to talk about. We have some commitments, which these days, guys, every week we have commitments to talk about, and some pretty good ones this week. We'll talk a little spring practice, and who knows what may come up. Stick around. Maybe it'll get interesting. I don't know. I'm not going to promise that, guys. But we do have some interesting recruiting news going on. We might as well start there. And so we've had two transfer portal commitments this week. One of them just this morning, and the high school offensive lineman. Let's start with the portal, and we're talking about two guys who actually played against USC last year, I suppose. Let's start with the one from Notre Dame. Has a famous last name. Arguably has a famous first name, I suppose. But Kennedy Urlacher, son of Brian, formerly a Notre Dame safety, made the commitment probably shortly after we taped our last show. I'm excited about this kid. Who wants to talk about Kennedy Urlacher first?
Mark always likes to go first.
He does. Mark, go first.
That was a subtle hint, Eric. All right. The thing I like about Kennedy Urlacher, obviously you like the last name. He's got that pedigree. He had that quote when he was still at Notre Dame that he likes playing on special teams. He loves playing on kick coverage. That tells me he loves the game of football, because anybody who wants to just turn himself into a human missile likes contact. You can never have enough of those type of guys on your roster. And I think he fills two roles because he's got that tweener type of body. He's not really a linebacker. He's probably a step slow to play safety, but he kind of reminds me of a Matt Grudegood type of player, where you now have the versatility. Maybe you line him up at linebacker in certain situations. Maybe you put him in the slot in different situations, but you got another physical person on that field at the time, and that's all that matters, right? So we know Dan likes to be versatile with his roster personnel. Excuse me. Kennedy is the perfect candidate for that, and the fact that he's got 3 more years of eligibility left, you love it. You know, he now gets to bring that culture, that relationship that he built up with Chad Bowden over there at Notre Dame. It seems like he's going to be the perfect fit at USC. So I'm pretty stoked about this one, despite his 3-star ranking, and he didn't have a lot of playing time last year. Remember, last year Notre Dame's defense was pretty good, especially in the secondary. He was a true freshman, so I'm willing to watch him grow with Dan Lynn and Belk and Rob Ryan and see what they can do with this young man. You got to like the pedigree. Can't go wrong with the last name Erlocker.
Notre Dame had a pretty crowded safety room, but as best I could tell, the people who follow Notre Dame football were high on the kid. Thought he was a good football player who was going to do some things. Eric, where do you think he's going to play?
I think he's a pure safety, right? We had talked and I had mentioned that I think USC could have gone out and gotten a like true nickel corner to replace Greedy Vance, because right now the options there are either you're going to move a safety there or you're going to rely on maybe some guys who haven't played a lot. Prophet Brown is the one name who returns, who's played there a little bit and could potentially take that step into being a starter there at nickel. So there was a thought when he committed, like, oh, is he a nickel? And he's not a like slot corner nickel. Uh, but he is sort of that kind of tweener hybrid linebacker safety. And so I think he's a guy. Now you've got Kamari Ramsey who can play 3, 4 different spots. You've got Eric Gentry who can play 3, 4 different spots. And I don't think Urlacher's a guy where you just say, man, he's a starter and he's in your first 11. But he's another piece where Denton Lynn has shown he could get creative where he lines guys up and he can work a little bit at linebacker. He can work at safety if Ramsey is an option for you to move around and play nickel. He can become part of that two deep at safety there, where all of a sudden then you just have Bishop Fitzgerald, Christian Pierce. Now Erlacher adds to that with another guy there because Doug Buck did play a lot of guys in the secondary. And he said early on, I want to rotate 8 to 10. He didn't always have 8 to 10 available, but he almost always played 8 to 10 guys. I mean, if you look back at snap counts, that rotation was pretty significant, and you had a depth chart where the starters were pretty obvious, and so it wasn't like there were guys kicking down the door of those starters there. So now I think you add to that depth chart where you feel comfortable if there's an injury or you need to rotate or something like that. So I think he is that kind of Christian Pierce safety back there, and maybe he's right behind Kamari Ramsey as the two, and now you have Ramsey, Urlacher, Fitzgerald, Pierce as kind of four guys that you feel really comfortable playing. But the thing that stands out to me, there was a lot of talk about, is he fast enough to play safety? He's definitely not big enough to just line up at linebacker and say, hey, you got to play, inside linebacker every snap. But it's a little bit like you can be a really good base runner at baseball without being the fastest guy. Like that first step instinct get to the ball is so evident with him that he plays right, and you hear that a lot. He plays faster than he tests, and I think that's sort of what's evident in his just his first year uh, playing at this level. I think that's what stands out. So again, he's quicker than he tests, and just one of those guys that gets to the football. A lot of guys will, on defense, you get a guy just runs into every block, like doesn't have that innate ability to just avoid people, and he gets to the football when he goes after it, and that is very easy to see when you watch him play.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I'm with you. His highlight tape from his freshman year at Notre Dame was actually pretty impressive. This is a guy who attacks. He gets downfield. He tackles very well. He's going to be around the football. He's a guy who's instantly going to improve your special teams, if nothing else, right? He's gonna be on coverage units, and he's going to make plays. I also think that USC is usually in a base nickel, but there were teams that against some of the more run dominant teams in the Big Ten last year, they played a lot of three linebacker sets. I don't think that Urlacher here is a linebacker, but I do think he's a guy who can play nickel instead of going with a three linebacker set against run heavy teams. He's going to give you more of a physical presence, a guy who's going to be a better tackler in the box than maybe your third corner would be, but also guy's going to give you a little bit more speed than you're likely to get from a third linebacker that's 235 pounds. So my guess is he makes some plays this year. And look, I don't know that you have to be all that fast to play strong safety. Speed helps everywhere, but USC's had some really good strong safeties that couldn't run particularly well. Kevin Ellison was an unbelievable strong safety. Unbelievable. I think he ran a 4.8 at the combine. He couldn't run. But he had great instincts and he could tackle. I think that with Kennedy Urlacher, you're looking at a guy who probably can do that for you. So yeah, I mean, he may be something of a tweener, but tweeners who have a nose for the football and can tackle are guys that can help your football team. So it seems like a good pickup to me. Today, we got another transfer portal addition on the defensive side of the ball. Tamir Robinson from Penn State, a linebacker. USC, there were rumors that USC was looking at a few different linebackers. This, I think, is the one that they wanted the most. They certainly jumped on the opportunity to bring him in and offer him. What do we know about Tamir, Eric?
Well, he hasn't played a ton of football recently over the last, 3, 4 years, and he hasn't played a ton of linebacker in his career. So he was a guy that sort of started making the shift to inside linebacker in high school, knee injury, cut short his junior year, cost him his senior year. Penn State saw enough, stuck with him, and knew, I think everyone who covered Penn State sort of had the idea that this guy's going to be brought along slowly as he gets back into football and also kind of learns that position. And then they saw enough last year where he did play 100 snaps, something like that on defense, where it was like, oh, this might work. And then he got enough run this spring with guys injured and all of that for a lot of people to think he's gonna make an impact. Again, he was not gonna show up this fall at Penn State as a sure thing starter, and I don't think he shows up at USC this fall as a sure thing starter, which we have not seen a lot of when it comes to transfer portal additions for USC defensively. Like when they've brought in a defensive guy, it has typically been you have to start because there's nobody else. We need someone like that to start. And so this spring, you're seeing more. We can add to depth. We can bring guys in who are going to help on special teams and give us some needed snaps. And I think that's where he helps. You've heard just so much buzz about Desmond Stevens and about Eric Gentry as those top two linebackers. But a guy that you feel comfortable as that number three guy, either first guy off the bench or you just talked about it with Kenny Urlacher. There were games, Minnesota last year, Michigan last year, and you're going to get them again this year, where your third linebacker plays a whole lot more than your true kind of slot nickel corner. And so I think he gives you an option there where behind those top two, it was Jaden Walker. Am I going to bet the over on Jaden Walker in his career? Yes. Do I absolutely know for a fact that he can be your number three and take a ton of snaps this fall? I don't know. I think that he could play, but I just don't think you can go into this year with a whole lot of, yeah, I hope that works out. I hope our depth is okay there. I think you need to shore that up. So I think that's where he steps in. I think he has the ability, the athletic ability to maybe play all three spots at linebacker and potentially be that sort of third starter when you need a guy. So again, the athletic ability, the size, 6'3", 230. That's a bit that's what you see from Big Ten linebackers, 6'3", 235. I think has been like the top Big Ten linebacker the last few years has checked in right there. So again, this was the spot, linebacker. Got to get one. Have to. And so I think that's a good checks the boxes, 3 years of eligibility left at USC. I know people wanted sort of a senior 1 year guy who can start and play a ton, but this seems to make a lot of sense, this addition.
Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm this pickup is interesting because for me, Andrew Simpson wasn't really a legitimate candidate. That's that 1 year linebacker that Eric was alluding to. He's a starter. He's going to a place where he's going to get starter minutes. He wasn't going to get that at USC. The linebacker I thought USC, at least in my opinion, should have gone after is the kid from South Dakota, Gary Bryant. Multiple years of eligibility left. A more of a true inside linebacker, somebody who is familiar with the Midwest landscape. You look at his highlight film, he had that monster game against Wisconsin. He was around the ball every single time. What I see with Tamir is a different version of Eric Gentry. Someone who's got that length. He's got those condor arms. What are they, 35 inches on each side? So, I mean, he covers a lot of space. So I think that's what they're looking for is somebody who can play a similar role to Gentry and they can kind of bring him along. And the other issue, again, that Eric brought up from the very beginning, he's been injured. So you're bringing somebody in who, with his history of injury, how much are you going to get out of him this year? You've got, we all agree, as long as Gentry and Desmond Stevens are healthy, they're not coming off the field. When they do come off the field, Jaden Walker, Anthony Beavers are the next two up. So are you looking for somebody who can play that Eric Gentry role? Because when you look at him, he 6'3", 235, long arms. Is he a linebacker or is he an edge player? I think USC needs help in the middle at linebacker, not so much guys on the outside. I'm not there. It's the coaching staff. They're making the decision. But for me, if I had to pick between Robinson and Gary Bryant, I'm going with Gary Bryant. And that's not a knock on Tamir. I'm just looking at it from a different perspective.
Yeah, it did seem like those were the two guys USC was weighing. They were going to take one of the two. I look, I don't know. I think Penn State was looking at playing Tamir at Mike. I don't think they weren't planning on putting him on the edge. So with Robinson, you have a guy who seems to have a lot of athletic gifts, has a lot more snaps than Tamir, but at a much lower level of competition. With Robinson, you have a guy who was going to get snaps at Penn State on a very good defense this year. I don't think there's any question about it. I don't think he was expected to be a starter, but he was a guy who was going to see the field for them, which means that he's stepping into essentially the same role at USC that he was going to have at Penn State, I think, where there are snaps to go around. I know last year the two starters played about 98% of USC snaps. I don't think that's what the coaches want. That's not good. It's especially not good with Eric Gentry. I don't think you want Eric Gentry playing 80 snaps a game. That's a guy who has had enough of an injury history at USC and is important enough that you need to have some series where he doesn't have to be on the field, or at least some plays where he doesn't have to be on the field. So as between the two, Bryant and Robinson, I don't know. I could see arguments both ways, but you're getting a guy who you have one elite program already who's concluded this is a guy who can be in our rotation and get snaps, and so that's probably a good fit. It's a good thing that Penn State was surprised and disappointed that he left. I mean, that's ordinarily that's not the case, right? If you look at most of the guys who have transferred out of USC, in most cases it wasn't a surprise and it wasn't disappointing. There are some exceptions to that, but so it's always nice when the guys who follow the other programs say, "Man, that's kind of a bummer. We thought this guy was coming along and was going to get some real time this year. I don't know why he left." So anyway, we've been talking about it. USC had to have a linebacker who you could count on to play this year. They had to. You cannot go into a season with a linebacker room 4 deep, only 2 of whom have even played. And frankly, one of those, Desmond Stevens, didn't play a ton. So you needed somebody else. We'll see whether they're done at that position. But in any event, I think you have 2 transfer portal guys right now who are going to get snaps, who are going to make you better on defense, who are going to get you depth, and who are going to be guys you can count on to go down and make plays on special teams too. So 2 solid additions. Got another high school addition this week as well. Offensive lineman from Colorado, Canon Smith. Mark, what do you think about Cannon? USC stacking up some offensive linemen this year. That's a nice thing.
So, I kind of had a feeling that USC was going to start maybe going on a little bit of a run with offensive linemen, but I was focused on those, elite names that they're looking at, the Kenya Pepes of the world, the Malachi Lee, the Samuel Utu. I know Canon Smith has been on the radar. I just didn't expect him to fire the shot, the day after his most recent visit. And here you are. I'm going to make the strongest argument for why the star system sucks. He's a 3-star. Look at his offer sheet and tell me that's a 3-star offer sheet. Every single blue blood program you can think of. You've got Alabama, you've got Ohio State, you've got Michigan. Everybody wanted this young man.
And Penn State and Oregon, both of whom thought they had a shot at him, I think.
Correct. So this is a huge pickup. You look at his film. He plays both sides of the ball. He can play offensive line. He can play defensive line. In high school, he's been lining up a tackle, both left tackle and right tackle. Really athletic, really nimble on his feet, super aggressive. And I love when he gets to that second level because he launches dudes. When you hear about decleating, you can literally see the bottom of the opponent's cleats flying 3 yards down the field. That's how hard he hits people. I think USC is bringing him in to play center, interior offensive line is what they're forecasting him at. I love this pickup. I really do. I'd like to see them now start focusing on the outside on the tackles, but You look at this guy's film, and you're thinking USC found a good one. And there's nothing about this film that I don't like. He's very athletic. He's played, when he came into high school, he was playing 4 sports: track and field, he's shot put, and discus. So this one started with Josh Henson back in May last year. He made the offer. Zach Hansen closed the deal. So again, I think as far as offensive line recruiting, USC has done pretty well these last few years. This is another guy that highly underrated if you're using the star system. But you look at his offer sheet, and USC came out on top over some pretty big time programs.
Yeah, Eric, thoughts on Kannon?
Yeah, he was a guy that I definitely wanted in this class, and he's a guy that USC has not gotten in previous classes. I think that top Colorado offensive lineman has always been interesting, and USC went in. Hayden Treater was a guy that they got out of that state, but it's always seems like Tennessee, Michigan, Ohio State, like they're able to go in and grab that guy. Oregon is a name there too, and so for USC to go right now, gone into Utah, gone into Colorado, offensive linemen, I think those are big statements. And then Mark mentioned the teams that were going after him. Like it wasn't necessarily that those teams were just like, let's keep an eye on this guy and keep the burner warm under him. Like no, those programs wanted him. He was coveted by some big names in the recruiting world, and so for USC to go in and win that now is a pretty significant statement from a program that now has made a bunch of them in this class. And so I think the fact that he's said during this cycle, like I think center is probably my spot going forward. USC definitely sees him as an interior guy, but he could play all 5. He could play all 5 spots along the offensive line, and that's a key that we've heard too. Lincoln Riley's talked about that with offensive and defensive linemen, like the idea of guys being versatile and being able to play a bunch of different spots is something that they look for in a lot of these players. He plays offensive line and defensive line. He plays for a program in Valor Christian where it's like, yeah, I'll take guys from that program. I mean, there's a few schools out of state where that guy started multiple years at that program. Sounds good. And so that's one of those, and he's getting great coaching out there. It's it's a big addition, especially at this point. And when you talk about getting these guys in early and getting them all kind of bonded and together and all of that, he was USC was going to take a big class, and you knew they weren't just going to take 5 offensive linemen. But I had him in there as if I could only take 5 guys, he was in that group for me.
Yeah, I'm with you. He might be a 3-star by most of the services, but he's not a project. This is a guy who just about all the big schools wanted. And if you watch his tape, he's an athletic kid who plays with a mean streak. He's a football player. This is a really good pickup. And one thing I'll say for the USC staff over the last few years is that they do a really nice job of identifying 3-star players who do not come in and look like they're 3-star players. And that's something that they had to do a couple of years ago when they didn't have Oregon and Ohio State money. This year they're still bringing in guys who they're confident are far better than their star rating, and Canon Smith is one of them. He's a good football player, and now you have a growing class of, I think this is the 5th offensive line recruit. You still have some other guys who USC is probably the favorite for, right? At least 2 that I can think of they're the favorite for, and they're in the mix for some other guys. So this is going to be an enormous offensive line class. We'll see whether all of those guys stick. I hope they do. But gone are the days when USC would recruit 1 offensive lineman in a recruiting class, and then I was going to say, and then hope for the best. But if you're recruiting 1 offensive lineman in a recruiting class, I don't even know if you can hope for the best. You already know that everything has gone south at that point.
So who would you lose out of the group that they have committed so far? You've got Isun Tapa, you've got Vlad Diakono, John Fafita, and the big dude from San Diego, Chase Deans, however you pronounce pronounce his last name. I, there's not one player in that group that you're saying, you know what, we're gonna put you on the back burner over here.
No, look, I'm with you. If there are players that think the room is too crowded and they don't want to come, then somebody might leave. Although I think all of these guys knew that USC was going to take a big offensive line class, and USC's not reaching at this point. They don't have to. They have a lot of bodies in their class, and they're in the mix for a lot of others. If they're taking a guy at this point, it's because they really want him. So no, I don't think there are any guys they have committed that they don't want. And my guess is they'll try to hold on to all 7. I think they were planning on 7. They may, if you look at the guys that are still out there, you could see them taking 8. I mean, there are just too many big bodies, and this is a program that right now is committed to getting bigger and more athletic on both sides of the line, and they're doing it. And Canon Smith will help that. There was, interestingly enough, a prediction from Steve Wiltfong that Elbert Hill is going to commit to USC. Scott Schrader hasn't gone on record with that, and I think Wiltfong may be a little more aggressive than Schrader and some others. I bring it up only because it does show that USC is in on some additional national level recruits where, I don't know if they're going to get this kid ultimately or not, but they have a shot at him. I don't think there's any question about that. And so not only are you putting together an enormous offensive line class with really good players, not only are you putting together what I think is going to be a really good defensive line class, but the secondary class could be an all-timer. I mean, if you look at the guys they have, USC could have 3 of the top 5 corners in the country if things go right for this recruiting class, which is just extraordinary. What other thoughts do we have on recruiting, whether it's secondary or anything else? What should we be looking out for? Not necessarily asking for predictions, although we'll always take them. But what should USC fans be on the lookout for in the coming week or two?
This Saturday, right, is a big time visit weekend. USC finishes up its spring ball, and it's not doing right. It doesn't have the spring game at the end, but that last practice, they have got that. I should go back. This whole spring has been totally different in terms of who's at practices. It is, the sidelines are loaded with visitors, and you see Chad Bowden just up and down, shaking hands, all of that stuff. Like that's it means something. And I hesitate to say like it's completely different and they'd totally dropped the ball, because I don't want to make it seem like USC had just not been recruiting or having guys out. But it's a bit of a different experience for these recruits and parents and visitors and all of that to come to practice now. And it's all part of the bigger support staff. And you see a lot of USC fans, what's this guy do? What's this title? Why are you adding them? How many people do you need to do all this stuff? This is it. When the coaches are coaching, you have all of these touch points now for these visitors, and they can get guided through practice and spend tons of time with USC people that means something there, that are big names in that personnel department. And so you see these people visiting, and they get just unbelievable again, time with people who matter at USC during these trips. So that's been really big. I guess the biggest name, Ryder Lyons, right, has been at a couple, which always, when he's at USC, his brother is there. So you have that. It's not like he's, driving across the country or whatever to see some school that he has no connection to. But on campus, as much as he's been, is a big thing. You see it with Tom, who lives on campus now, basically. Like it's a different feel. Recruits and stuff are going out of their way even to be on campus and be at these practices and spend time with the coaches and the personnel and all of that. But this weekend is shaping up to have some big names, offensive linemen, defensive linemen, all of that. It's going to be a pretty big splash there on Saturday with again, what's a without the spring game is going to be kind of a, more private, more recruiting oriented type of environment for them.
Mark, anything to add to that?
The only thing I would add is, I was one of the bigger skeptics of how much a general manager can help a program immediately. The biggest thing that I've seen Chad Bowden come over to USC and do, and it's a huge thing, it's the messaging. Eric was talking about it right there, where he's walking up and down the sidelines, shaking hands. The message is the Trojan family is really a true thing. We want you in here as soon as possible. We want to make you part of the Trojan family. That way you can start selling the program to the guys you want to play with. Why USC is the place to be. And that got backed up for me completely when I watched Trevon Reed on the Trojans Live radio show yesterday. He said something that really resonated. And he is known as a top-line recruiter. He was ready to be Auburn's general manager before he decided he wanted to come to USC and learn how to be a coach. But he said, look, recruiting today is a lot different than when I was being recruited. He was a 5-star coming out of high school. He could have gone anywhere. He could have gotten the biggest swag bag he wanted, but he wasn't raised that way. So now when when he's talking to recruits or Chad Bowden or anybody, it's like, look, we know the money's out there, but make sure you're going to the place that you'll fall in love with. So if you're in love with USC and somebody else out there is offering you an extra 20,000, is that extra 20,000 going to make you happy? And I think that's what's really being sold right now with recruiting. USC is going to help you get paid. You're going to get your NIL, but we're also going to help you look at the bigger picture. And they're starting to, I think I'm stating the obvious. They're focused on California again. And it's not that they weren't focused prior, but they are making it a concerted effort. You're from California. You're the best in the state. There's no reason why you should be playing anywhere else but at USC. So you got all that going on right now. And as long as it holds true and these guys sign on the dotted line in December and then again in February, all's good. But you have to kind of tip your hat to what Chad Bowden has brought along with him, the message that they want to convey. And if it's making Lincoln Riley a better head coach because he's more relaxed, he can now focus on the X's and O's and the guys on the roster and where they want to play, great. Again, it feels really good right now. And again, one of the biggest skeptics out there. So the proof will be in the pudding when we see how this all comes together this season with the team itself and then with this new recruiting class. Because it's starting to vibe. It's starting to feel like the old times. The fact that we, you and Eric and I, we can't be in practice and on the sidelines with all the recruits and the families. I'd like to be there, but the fact that the recruits want to be there. I'll close it with this. Talanoa Ely, the linebacker, the #1 linebacker in the state. He wasn't at USC's practice this past Saturday. But you know who was? His family, his parents. I don't remember seeing that very recently, if not ever, where a recruit doesn't show up to practice, but the family does because that's how much they're bought in. I mean, that's a statement right there that something's different this year than what was going on these first few years that Lincoln Riley took over the program.
Yeah. I mean, this coaching staff, the general manager and all the other personnel guys, they're preaching the revival of USC, and it's easy for fans at other programs, including some that have never had a glorious past, talk about how, well, that's so long in the past. These kids weren't even around when Reggie Bush was there. That's fine. Their parents were, and their high school coaches were. And when Lincoln Riley and Chad Bowden and others are talking about how this is one of the great programs in college football history, and we're coming back, we're doing it right now, we're doing it with this class, that's going to resonate with dads, and it's going to resonate with moms, and it's going to resonate with high school coaches, even the kids who don't know USC's history. But the ones that are in Southern California, they do know USC's history. They do. They know who Matt Leinart is. They know who Reggie Bush is. They know who Junior Seau is. They know the names. They know the national championships. They know the Heisman. So it helps if you're making that pitch to have a bunch of guys who are already excited about it and committed to it and showing up all the time, right? It's a much easier pitch to sell when you have currently the #1 ranked recruiting class and you're in on a lot of other big time guys. So in addition to having all those guys around and forming, coming together as a group, as much as that helps you hold on to those guys long term, which is something we've talked about, it also, the momentum of this also helps sell the story. If you're telling everybody this is a class that's going to bring USC back to the elite and win a national championship, it's easier for people to believe when they show up and you've got 50 recruits out there, 20 of whom are already committed, right? And you know who these guys are and you know they can play. So yeah, the recruiting is very exciting. You can also tell that the coaches are relaxed and confident with the roster they have. We talked about it last week with Chad Bowden, but the more of these Lincoln Riley interviews you see, the less you get the impression that you're looking at a coach who's thinking, oh boy, we've got some real problems and I hope we can pull it together this year. He doesn't look and sound like a guy who thinks that way. He looks and sounds like a guy who looks at his roster and looks at his schedule and says, we might be able to make a run. And maybe he's wrong about that, right? Maybe he's wrong about that, but that's certainly the impression I get from him. Eric McKinney, is that the impression you get from Lincoln Riley these days?
I think they like where they're headed. I think they like the roster construction. I think that they're always positive, right? They're always going to sell positivity. There's no reason to stand up there right now and go, boy, I don't know. I don't know if people should show up this year, right? I mean, we saw Lincoln Riley his first year, second year talk about how electric the environment was at the Coliseum, and we look around and go, this is about 70%, 65% full. I don't know. So like it's his job to kind of sell positivity. But if Jade Mayava is going to take steps forward this spring, and if you feel more comfortable with what you have there, I don't know. Certainly not at the key spots. You don't look and go, boy, I don't know how we're going to be better than we were last year. I mean, every spot, I think every spot on defense, outside corners, we'll see, right? But I don't think at the beginning of last year you knew what you were going to get from Jalen Smith either. So I think that at pretty much every spot where you look, you can go, yeah, that's a step forward. And if you take a step forward at all of those spots, maybe punter, right? We'll see on punter.
We're not going to be better at punter. I'm going to go on.
I don't know how you could be, but
2 Ray Guy awards in a row. That's not going to happen.
yeah, Ray, you need to win the Ray Guy Plus this year, I think, since you won it last year. So, but if you take a step forward, if you really do take a step forward at even half the spots, and you're just as good as last year, those flip into wins, and that record is a whole lot better. So I don't see any reason why you'd crush him right now for the positive impact. And again, I talked about sort of the recruiting personnel and all of that. What you're seeing in terms of the coach's ability to coach, and again, that was kind of how it was sold early, like Bowden coming in, bringing in all these recruiting personnel, all the roster construction professionals, all of that. Coaches can coach. Coaches get to coach. And you're hearing that from players, right? We get to spend a whole lot more time on technique and one-on-ones and individuals, all of that sort of thing. How does that not help you become a better football program once you get that kind of all rolling and moving in? So, yeah, am I going to sit here and say that there's only one loss on the schedule this year? Not yet, but I think they could be a pretty good team this fall, and I don't think he's out of line to sit here and say we really like the direction that we're going right now.
Yep, no, I'm with you. I look, I'm also not going to predict 11-1 this year, but I think this is last year's team was a team that played with everybody on the schedule, including some really good teams that went pretty deep in the playoffs. This year's team is going to be better, and it's going to be better with a schedule that I think is probably a little bit easier than last year's schedule. So you still have some really tough road games. You do. And you still have Michigan coming to the Coliseum. That there's nothing easy about that. This is a team that's going to win some football games, and it's a team that going to South Bend, you can look at it and say, I think we can play with those guys. Even in that place, I think we can play with those guys. That's how I look at this football team, and I don't think it's wrong to look at it and say that USC is going to be much better than they were last year. I don't know what that means record-wise, right? You don't know. You have a couple of you have a missed kick and a bad penalty at the end of a couple of games. That's the difference between 10-2 and 8-4. So I'm not making a record prediction. I'm just saying this USC team is going to be pretty good, especially if they're better at quarterback. Are they going to be better at quarterback? We'll see. But Lincoln Riley didn't act like a desperate guy this offseason at the quarterback position. He didn't. So I don't know. Now, one interesting question, you brought it up, Eric, the happy talk from Lincoln about the atmosphere at the Coliseum when, sometimes you look at it at kickoff, it was half full and climbed up to 70% by the end. I guess one question is there this excitement that you see inside the program right now, or with people who follow the program very closely, like the three of us, does that translate to the wider football watching community, both casual USC fans and then casual sports fans in LA? Because in Los Angeles, you do not sell out the Coliseum unless casual sports fans in LA are interested in USC football. That's just the way it is. There are not 78,000 committed USC football fans that go to games. There never have been. During Pete's days, there weren't. During McKay's days, there weren't. So my question for you guys is, this good stuff that we're seeing, does it translate into excitement outside of those who are already deeply committed? Or is that community still going to be a little bit disinterested until USC goes on a run? What do you think?
It's that one. It's the second one.
Yeah.
You're not going to
pretty easily.
You're not going to get 70% capacity even at the end of the game for Missouri State and Georgia Southern. You're just not.
No, that's fair. That's fair. But
if you want to increase capacity and you want to make sure you got butts in the seats, make the announcement you've got a new starting quarterback at the beginning of the year. That'll generate some enthusiasm, but I don't think that's what they want to do, nor do they need to do. What you and Eric just said, USC has to come home from Purdue 3-0, and that's when you're going to all of a sudden see the casual fan show up and say, all right, let's see what you got. It's not 100 degrees outside. It's not Missouri State. It's not Georgia Southern. You're 3-0. You look impressive. That's what the casual USC LA fan base needs to see.
I think it's 5-0 coming back against Michigan. I think that's right. That's the first big sellout event, unless the only other thing I'd say is if Chad Bowden's got some P.T. Barnum in him for the Missouri State opener, right? If there's something that they've got where you can put butts in seats somehow, right? Ticket giveaways or whatever, like that work that will go into a season opening sellout. But just organically, will people show up for that? No, not yet.
Here's what they do. They take a page from Coastal Carolina. Everybody gets free refreshments who shows up. Whatever. I mean, for one game, everybody gets a free hot dog, hamburger, and soda twice.
USC has never shown a tremendous amount of interest in finding ways to get people to football games that don't involve also getting people to pay to go to football games. And that probably will continue this year. You guys, look, those first two home games, those are ugly games. They are. I'm gonna be out of the country anyway, so I'm gonna be watching them late at night over the internet. But I gotta be honest, even though it's an opener, telling me that I need to fly in from Missouri State would be a reach. and I love USC football, like very few people do. That's a bad game, but you win. You win. They're going to come back from Purdue 3-0. They're going to. If they don't, things have gone terribly, terribly wrong. You beat Illinois on the road. You're undefeated facing a Michigan team, which is going to bring a lot of their own fans.
That's a sellout
And
already, I would assume. Like Michigan,
it
whatever
will,
they need to buy, they'll buy and fill it up.
And you'll
that
get the same thing with Sparty too. I mean, both of those schools are going to bring.
Yeah, will be a lot of people there for that one too.
Yeah, and then and look, you if you're in that position, then you've got Notre Dame and Michigan back to back in October, and that's going to decide what the season looks like, right? I mean, you win those two, and you are off to the races. You split those two, and you're still in a really good spot. So we'll see. Look, LA fans require more than Nebraska fans, right? In Nebraska, they're going to sell out the place, even though they probably won't be very good this year and they haven't been good in 20 years. That's just the way it is, and that's fine. Lincoln Riley probably knew when he came to USC that's not what USC is. Much like Miami's the same way. Miami only sells out that place when they have a good opponent and a good football team. The rest of the time, their attendance is worse than USC's, and that was true even when Miami won a lot of football games. So that's just the way it is in a place like LA. But there's excitement around the program, and I think for good reason. I think we're seeing some good things here. What we haven't seen, at least not yet, is a lot of transfer portal exits from USC. Now, the schedule kind of lines up weird, right? Because what is it? Is it this Friday that you're supposed to be in the transfer portal and spring practice doesn't end until Saturday? So it would have to be guys leaving in the middle of spring practice, but that doesn't stop people. I mean, look at Tennessee. Sometimes people leave in the middle of spring practice because they can't wait to get to Westwood and play for that program. You haven't seen a lot of that. Guys, I don't want names, obviously, not that you would give any. Do we anticipate more exits from USC in the coming week?
Yeah, I put the over, somewhere between 1 and 5. I'm still thinking that's what you're going to get. I don't know. Like I said, we're not going to talk about names, but you can think of a couple different position groups where you can see one guy or two guys saying, you know what, just too much. There's just too much in front of me right now. I got to go somewhere else.
What do you think, Eric? Mark says 1 to 5. That's a pretty big range. If you told me one and then you let me exclude, say, 6 or 7 names from that one, I'd feel pretty good about that. 5 is a slightly bigger number, especially when they haven't had many people go. What do you think?
Yeah, I think on the lower end of that 1 to 5. I think at most just a couple. Uh, you've gone through spring ball, and I think USC has been better about kind of get right NIL ducks in a row, everybody kind of on the same page moving forward. And I think there's again like a lot of excitement about kind of being in the program, and I think at those some of those positions where you're seeing a lot of depth, like defensive line. I mean, we saw Lorenzo Cowan bounce earlier. And so I'd be surprised if you hang around, know what the depth looks like, the depth chart looks like. Maybe not the exact depth chart from game one, but I can see who's here. I can see who I'm competing with. I'd be surprised if someone just all of a sudden was like, yeah, I'm going in. But saying I'd be surprised, I've also kind of tampered that down with the transfer portal and all of that, where if you're surprised, then you're not paying attention, right? Nothing should surprise you anymore because everything is on the table in terms of somebody back channeling. We're going to get you $7 million to go in the portal. Then we'll figure it out later, see how it works out. So, there's always that on the table, but there doesn't seem to be just a ton of guys who are obvious. I think there's probably a couple at some positions, and as USC, right, they add a defensive back, they add a linebacker. You start to bring in, now in sort of crunch time, you're going to get a couple more visitors at some spots potentially this week, and so yeah, it starts to move a little bit. I don't think that it's uh zero. I don't think it's zero, but I'd be still a little surprised if it's more than three that go in. And it's always a weird, right? Like, you have to tell the school that you want to go in by Friday, but then there's the weekend and then you've got 48 hours. So I think it's like even next Tuesday or something, even Wednesday, that you could still hear names going in just based on how all that stuff, works out with timing and all of that. But Lincoln Riley said, and yeah, like he thinks of the roster is here right now, and so you're not expecting eight more transfer portal additions or anything like that. So it's not as if they need to shove guys out and make room, but someone will hear, hey, we got a spot for you somewhere else, and it'll feel like the right move.
I would think at this point, the guys who really wanted out are probably out. And the guys who are thinking about leaving, it's because you show up at spring practice, you find out that you're not second or third on the depth chart with older guys in front of you, but instead some younger guys have jumped ahead of you. Those are the guys that tend to leave at this point, and those are the guys that you should wish the best to, right? I mean, those are not the Emmanuel Pregnons or Bear Alexanders of the world. Those are the guys who probably want to play at USC. It's why they're still here for the spring portal. And they're just looking at the depth chart and saying, I'm not sure I can do it here. And so you may have some of those guys. But the other thing about those guys is that it's not a huge hit to the program. Even if you like them and you wish them the best, it's not. You would expect that the guys who can command big dollars and wanted to chase after big dollars would have left already. That just that seems to be the right way to go. Although some people aren't great with their timing. Again, if you look at Tennessee, you have a quarterback who apparently was interested in leaving before the playoff game if he didn't get enough money, and then leaves during spring ball. So there are those guys out there, and I can't promise that none of them were Cardinal gold, although I'd be surprised. Okay, guys, anything else we learned this past week in spring practice that we didn't already know? Any rumors? Anything about guys who maybe we didn't expect were going to have a major role, and now it looks like maybe they will?
Eric, you were at practice this week. You heard Lincoln Riley talk about the quarterback situation. Anything? Do you have any takeaways from that? Is it closer than anybody really thinks it is? Or is that just coach speak?
I think we're in the same spot that we were last fall or last spring. The starter is very obvious, but you're leaving it with the feeling that like maybe they don't take every single very important snap this year. And this off season means a whole lot in this. Uh that's sort of where I am with the quarterback thing. Mayava is the starter, right? He's the starter just like Miller Moss was, but you heard enough about, hey, that next guy's doing all right. Next guy's doing all right. And so I think over the next few months, you see, who takes the bigger jump, and if Hassan is ready to go in the fall and becomes a guy who really pushes. And again, just like Miller, the hope is your starter and plays the whole year and plays really well. I think that's plan A. Uh, but yeah, I think it's a good thing when you start to hear positive stuff about the backup that you have an option because you may need him. You may need him. So I think that's good. The other thing that jumps out is that Jakeem Stewart is still like the guy when you ask players like who's standing out, who's really surprised, who's impressing, and he gets mentioned as much as anybody in terms of that. And so that's when it's a freshman, especially a freshman who comes in with that name and background and all of that, the veterans don't want to, "Hey, yeah, that guy," like that, you want to push him around a little bit and work him in a little bit. But I think that speaks to work ethic and maturity and all of that stuff that he's still being mentioned when it comes to, hey, who's a guy that's impressed, and people are reaching for his name pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's a deep room with the defensive lineman. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Jakeem Stewart is going to get real PT and is going to open some eyes. Right? That's a guy who, as a true freshman, you probably don't expect him to consistently dominate games, and he probably won't. But I bet he's going to make some highlight plays this year. He's just that kind of athlete. And you talk when you were not only were the USC coaches all in on this guy, somebody that everybody wanted, they were all in a way that tells you that they saw something special. But the way they talked about it and the way they continue to talk about it, Jakeem Stewart is going to make some plays this year. But I don't think he'll be the only one in that group. That's pretty good group, I think. Okay, anything else before we close this out, playing our game? What have we not talked about that we're supposed to talk about? You guys are the professionals. Let me know.
We did it. Covered it all.
Did. Okay, perfect. We did our job. All right. So we're playing Who Do You Take? And every once in a while, I'll give you guys the names beforehand. Today, I did not. You have no idea. You're thinking on your feet. Some of these, frankly, were more Greg Katz picks than you guys. But Katz is under the weather, so we don't have our historian here. So we're just going to have to make do. But the first one I know you guys can answer because you saw both of them. Here we go. You ready? Sean Cody or the big cat, Leonard Williams?
Eric, you go first.
Oh, that's tough. Leonard Williams. Leonard Williams. I think he did more with less. If you want to give me the whole package, right? The fact that Sean Cody still at USC and lives and dies Cardinal and Gold, all of that sort of stuff, what he meant, his commitment, all of that package. But as a player, Williams gets him a little bit.
So for me, it comes down to if I have to start my defensive line, do I want to start in the middle and work my way out, or do I want to start on the outside, work my way in? I got to go in the middle. I got to go with Sean Cody. I know when he started at USC, he started on the outside. He eventually settled in at defensive tackle. And this is nothing against the big cat, but again, Sean, he was that guy who changed the course of USC's direction. Once he got on board, everybody else came on board. And it was a start of that dynasty run that Pete Carroll had. And he has a really cool pizza restaurant too. So can't go wrong.
Well, look, I know when we play this game, we feel guilty because there's a guy we're not picking who's a legendary player. That's the whole point of the game, right? I mean, if this game's no fun if I told you Sean Cody and then a guy who was a four-string player under Paul Hackett, right? It doesn't make any sense. The game only makes sense because Sean Cody and the Big Cat are both legendary players. And Eric, I think you were onto something. Sean Cody had Mike Patterson, Kenichi Udeze. He had a couple of great linebackers behind him. Leonard Williams did not have that level of talent around him. He had to do it himself and was able to. But Sean Cody does occupy a special place in USC history. The first big-time recruit that Pete landed and was one of the key guys who brought USC back from nowhere to the very top.
Yeah, and so do they get any of those guys that you just rattled off, Chris, without Sean Cody? I mean, it's like
I think that Pete Carroll could sell any product to any person. So yes, if Sean Cody would have made a tragic mistake, Pete Carroll still would have loaded up with recruits. Sean Cody was the first, but the others didn't happen only because Sean Cody was there. Pete Carroll could sell snow to Eskimos. He could. That's just who he was. He was fantastic. All right, it's not going to get any easier. You ready? Number 2. Who went first last time? McKinney, you went first? Okay, Mark, this is you first. Lindell White or Ricky Bell? Pick your big back.
You know why this isn't a fair question? Ricky Bell is my all-time favorite Trojan.
Well,
that's my answer. That's my answer.
Okay, you're going Ricky Bell, and there's nothing wrong with going Ricky Bell for just about any answer.
The only two-time Heisman he's the only two-time Heisman winner that didn't win it 2 times. He got robbed both years.
Clearly an extraordinary player. Lindell White, two-time national champion and all-time touchdown leader in USC history, and one of the most colorful as the former players that you're going to find. So he brings entertainment value, and once jumped off the roof during practice. Eric McKinney, what do you got? Linda White or Ricky Bell?
Yeah, I'm with Mark, Ricky Bell on that.
Okay. All right.
I don't think our
about-
older generation really knows how good he was. I mean, that dude was a man amongst boys. And when you listen to him talk, it sounds like he's just the humblest, most very humble dude.
Yeah. Yeah. Again,
So,
no wrong answers there. And Ricky Bell is never a wrong answer. All right. How about this? Lynn Swann or Keyshawn Johnson?
easy.
Me? Keyshawn. Done. Yeah.
Yeah, we can easily dismiss the NFL Hall of Famer who is also an All-American. And by
Yeah.
the way,
Who's we? I did.
But when I talked to my good buddy Luther Bradley, who was a two-time All-American at Notre Dame and still the all-time interception leader there, I believe, asked him who the best player he ever played against was, he said Lynn Swann. Lynn Swann, and he says it like it wasn't close. He tells this story about Lynn jumping up for a pass, and somebody is coming from directly behind Lynn. They're going to take his legs out from under him, and so as he catches the ball, he just opens his legs, and the guy goes right between him, and then he lands down. And he says he did it like it was like he could see things no one else could see. So that's the guy that Eric McKinney completely dismissed outright.
How many snaps did he take against Keyshawn?
Probably zero. Mark Holken, Lynn or Keyshawn?
You know, if Lynn Swann didn't have that debacle of a time as USC's athletic director, it would have been him.
No, you can't count that. You can't count it.
I didn't know that was part of the formula.
Can't count it. Because we're going to talk about that next. You can't count that.
Okay.
Lynn or Key?
If that's the case, I'll go with Lynn because he was at USC for 4 years. As great as Keyshawn was, and I know he's your boy, Lynn Swann was pretty special as a wide receiver during an era where running the ball was still in vogue.
Yeah. Again, there's no wrong answers there. Here, there's no right answer. Lynn Swann or Pat Hayden, not as a player, but as an athletic director. Who do you got?
I think Swann, because he was more absent than deliberately taking down USC athletics, right? Like just didn't do as much because he wasn't there.
Lynn Swann and just set up a lot of autograph signing sessions for him. Okay, I mean, look, there's no right answer. Mark Holken, who do you got as an AD, Lynn Swann or Pat Hayden?
I'll go with Hayden because I was disappointed with how Swann did the job. Here he was a senator from the state of Pennsylvania. He's going to come in, he's going to kick ass. He's not going to take any guff, from the NCAA. And like Eric said, we knew he had an office there, but what else did he do? At least with Pat, as much as he did some things, you're like, why did you do that? At least he was doing something. I mean, that whole debacle at Notre Dame, and there's a lot of stuff that you look.
Both answers leave a sour taste in my mouth. Swann, by the way, ran for governor and lost, I believe. I don't think he actually won anything. Okay, here we go. Curtis Conway or R.J. Soward solely as a return man?
Mark's first.
Curtis Conway. RJ had that fantastic freshman year, but RJ had that fantastic freshman year. That's it, as far as I'm concerned.
You got one punt return. Who are you putting back there? Conway.
Yeah, so Conway is on my, I think, I'm trying to remember who it came up. Tim McDonald, I think. Curtis Conway is on my all-time underrated USC players for his position. And that includes as a returner too. But Curtis Conway does not get nearly enough attention as in terms of what he deserves in that just wide receiver / football player, like what he did at USC.
Agreed. Okay, so we got two Conways there. All right. How about this one? This is one that nobody sees coming, but I think it's actually a good question. Cleveland Coulter, Mark Carrier's safety partner in the late 1980s, and Talanoa Hufanga. Two completely different eras, but you've got two big time safeties. Who are you taking?
Talanoa. I think he's incredible. I think he could have played in any era for any coach, any scheme. I think that guy was really good.
Okay, I'm going to make it harder for you just a second. But Mark, who are you taking? Talanoa or Cleveland? Cleveland doesn't get enough credit. Everybody thinks of Mark Carrier. He was fantastic.
Having these flashback memories of Cleveland roaming that defensive backfield back there, and he was an intimidator. He wasn't just a ball hawk. He would hit you hard.
Yeah, he would.
He would let you know. He would stand over you and say, "I hit you hard, didn't I?" What the hell? I'll go with Cleveland just because he doesn't get his name doesn't get brought up enough.
He needs some credit. I appreciate that. Eric McKinney, Talanoa or Mark Carrier? You got to start one of them next Saturday. Go.
Carrier there.
Okay. All right. So you were pumping up Talanoa. I thought we were gonna. I didn't put Talanoa or Mark Carrier because.
Well, I got to pick. What? Oh, they're even. I don't know. That's hard.
No,
like that was going to go over well with you.
I don't know. I don't know what you're doing. I have no idea what you're doing, Eric. Okay. How about this one? This is the first time I've ever asked a question where it's the same name on both sides. 1977 Clay Matthews or 2008 Clay Matthews?
2008. He was part of the greatest defense USC's ever had.
That 1977 Clay Matthews was not a bad football player. Eric McKinney, are you going to give any credit to Pops?
Well, like again, that's a Greg question more than me. Like I was not in the stands for a lot of the elder Matthews performances.
Were you even in the womb yet?
No, not at that point. No. So respecting both of them and completely disrespecting you, Chris. I'm gonna not answer that one.
Okay, good. Well, if you're going to have to disrespect somebody, either elder Clay Matthews, younger Clay Matthews, or me, I'm probably the safest bet. Okay, that's it. That's the last one on the list. I don't have any more for you. And guys, what do we have to talk about? Obviously, next week we're going to have the grand finale of spring practice and a huge recruiting weekend to talk about. Hopefully, we'll have more news from the transfer portal. Anything else that you want to say? Give a word of wisdom to the people, Eric. Come on.
Right now, end of spring ball. Get all the information you need. WeAreSC, $1 for your first 7 days. Get there now. Finish off spring ball.
Yeah, come on. Things are heating up, people. Get in there. Mark Holkin, anything?
Yeah, the men's basketball team. Eric Musselman's putting together a pretty good roster. He's having a good offseason with the transfer portal, and he needs it.
It's got another commitment today, I think.
He doesn't need it as bad as Baylor, but he needed to rebuild that roster all over again.
All right. Well, there it is. If you thought coming on this show you weren't going to hear about USC men's basketball, you were wrong. You did.
Rich Rubin's doing a great job updating everything that's happening, so make sure you follow that.
Yeah, Rodney Rice, the pickup from Maryland, the big name, big money too. Reportedly, that was always a question for USC men's basketball. Are they gonna be able to compete with some of the big names? And that they did there. They did there.
Good. All right, there you go. Okay, well, I guess that's it. We will see you next week. We'll talk about all this. I think we're going to have more big recruiting news next week, so don't forget to join us. Until then, fight on, everybody.